Welcome everyone to episode 4 of our Inspire webinar series. My name is Albert Dryford. For those that don't know me yet, I'm Head of Operations and Training here at Inspire Africa. Last time, which was I think 2 weeks ago, we had Dr. Watson from St. Stithians College with us, and we discussed the various policies regarding the use of AI and artificial intelligence in schools. This afternoon, we are continuing our journey into the exciting world of artificial intelligence. Our topic for this afternoon is AI in the classroom, the thinking tool. And we have with us today Mr. Michael Matthews. He's HOD for Visual Arts from St. Stithians College, one of the leading schools in our country. He holds a master's degree in the fine arts and has exhibited in over 50 exhibitions locally and internationally. And Michael will talk to us about the practical applications of artificial intelligence in the classroom, providing us potentially with some examples of how he pushes the boundaries of creativity in this digital age. Welcome and thank you for joining us today, Michael.
Thanks very much.
I don't know if you would like to add something, but otherwise I think let's kick off straight away. I see your presentation's up and running, so I'll hand over to you.
Yes.
Those that do have questions, please feel free to add your questions in the comment section, and we will attend to them towards the end of the webinar. So over to you, Michael.
On another note, quickly before you start, Michael, everybody attending, thank you. We love to see the little thumbs up. There's a little emoticon there when an idea inspires you or you really like what Mr. Michael Matthews is saying. You know, give a little applause and let's keep the interaction going. Thank you very much. Michael, over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Krista. Okay, I'd just like to start off about the presentation. As I say, we're looking at AI, and I see it as basically a thinking tool. And so thinking about this thinking tool, immediately I thought to myself, well, I've got to start the presentation possibly with a non-thinking tool. You know, what were the non-thinking tools? Where did they sit in history? How did they function? So if we look at the history of non-thinking tools, we start off maybe 2.5 or so million years ago, and we see humans basically, or what's eventually the arrival of sapiens. And before that, basically we had the habilis starting off using tools. And the tools were quite simple. And I think, you know, like axes, or first of all, just like clubs, and then axes and things that were held by the hand. Which was quite important. And as time developed, so if we go from 2.5 million years ago, it took a long time for the tools to develop and to become sort of free tools that could move away from the power of the person wielding the tool, who had the tool. And so suddenly we have about 10,000 years ago, we suddenly have the introduction of bows and arrows. So that's a kind of tool that could be used where the object now could leave the human. And I think that's quite important. I'd also like you to just think about these dates that I've got up here, how we move in time, and how long it takes for tools to develop at this point in history. And, you know, so if we look at about 5,000 years ago, we suddenly find that we now have more tools for working the earth. And we have plows that animals can pull, plows that humans can pull, hoes, sickles. And these kind of tools is when humans are becoming more domesticated. In other words, they're starting to live and manipulate the land around them. I think I'd like to call them sapiens rather than humans. So the sapiens begin to manipulate the environment. And you can see the long gaps between the development of these tools. And eventually you come to the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, and eventually during the Iron Age, our tools become much stronger, and we're able to make strong knives, strong arrows in terms of weaponry. So I have mainly been looking at weapons as tools. I haven't looked at really the spoons and knives and the daily tools. So we're just looking at the big changes generally, so you can get a big picture of the time changes. And we come right down to the classical age. And our tools are still quite primitive in a way. You know, they're like bows and arrows, and there's tools that we need to handle with our hands. And at this time, what's important is that somebody would get good at a tool, and then they would teach somebody else how to use that tool. And that's where basically teaching is coming in, isn't it? And the role of the teacher becomes to teach the person who can wield the tool, use the tool to its maximum benefit, is the guy who's going to become the teacher, the sapien. And this happens right up to the classical age. We move into the Middle Ages, roughly up to about 1500s. And we see for the first time, we now have an even more powerful tool in terms of weaponry. We have firearms developed where now you could actually use some mechanism to project a missile using some other kind of force than the human force. So with a bow, your arm still has to be strong. You know, you've got to really pull the thing, and the British are famous for their long bows. They had to develop their arms to do that. Now you suddenly had weapons that you didn't need any strength. And the person who could wield the weapon the best was obviously the strongest. And then we move into the Industrial Revolution. And this is like quite a scary stage in history, because now suddenly tools, non-intelligent tools, become much more functional and much more independent in a way, because now you suddenly have steam driving the tools, and eventually you're going to have electricity driving the tools. And so the tool has moved away from being man or arm controlled to independent of the human body. And you can see that obviously we live with the modern tools and such as super machines that we live with now. Everything is electrified, everything is working off electricity. And so far, you've also been looking at all my AR drawings, actually, by the way. And then suddenly, about 50 years ago, we come into a new kind of tool. And that's roughly 70 years ago, we come to a new kind of tool, which is the AI tool. And this is really a new tool that is more scary, I suppose, than what one would have imagined the people were thinking during the Industrial Revolution. Because during that period, the humans were losing their jobs to the machines. And at the moment, this is what humans are thinking. And you're going to see this is going to come into my talk a little bit later. And now I just want to quickly look at some of the things that was happening or has happened in AI over the last couple of years. That's quite scary and also quite interesting. And we can sort of start off in about 9. I want to just jump straight into where big changes happen. And I'm going to look at particularly in games, because games is the things that nobody thought tools of any type could beat humans. And then suddenly in 1997, we have this big blue computer, and it competes against the world chess champion of the time, and the world chess champion loses. His answer was that the whole thing had been preset and that there's cheating going on. And even today in chess, so he was totally shattered. He later took back his words, and today in chess, AI is used to actually train humans to do better. But if you use an AI, it's still seen as cheating. And they call them sort of natural moves, and then moves that are not natural. The computer tends to make moves that are not natural, that no human would ever dream of. So that's quite interesting. I'll go through this quite quickly. If you go to roughly 2011, we have this game, and this is the kind of game that's a quiz game. And once again, you think a computer can't beat it. This computer is called Watson, and it basically beat the top players of Jeopardy in the world. And that was another surprise. This is when things really now started. You can see the gaps. And if you look at the early tools, how long it took to modify and how long we took to learn it. Because our brains have basically been the same since we became sapiens. And now we've got to suddenly adapt quite quickly. And so the next thing is, if we look at Go, this was a wonderful example. This is where AI really blew up again. Go was they never thought that the human would get beaten. The world champion in 2016 was taken on by AlphaGo, and he just couldn't believe it. He gave up playing Go after this. So within 3 months after losing to the computer AI, he just gave up. He said, what's the point? And this is the kind of thing that's happening, and you'll be really surprised what's going to come next. But then there are other type of games, like online games. Once again, everybody thought, no, you can't win. And if you look at the kind of thinking that is happening, that the AI is dealing with, is problem solving, eye-hand coordination, decision-making, memory, and it's outperforming our best players in the world as well. If you go to StarCraft, another game, same thing. And once again, it's gathering resources, technology, and you have to think and you have to defend. And once again, AI is 99.8% winning. And even in a game like poker, which is quite a game that has also critical thinking, has memory and problem solving. Once again, AI could outplay the top best 6 poker players in the world. And this is, just getting worse in that sense. The Stratego is also quite interesting. And here you have hidden pieces and deception. So the AI can actually now, at this point in 2022, which is last year, could start deceiving people on purpose to win. And that's quite shocking. And in a game called Diplomacy, this is like a politician's kind of game. You act like a politician. It could outplay any politician because it could negotiate better. And I think we're looking for a time when there won't be any politicians in the world. We'll have AI just making the negotiations, cooperating. But it also involves betrayal. And once again, an AI is getting really good at that. And if we come through to this year in virtual battles, we suddenly have AI that's been the last warrior that can stand. Once again, very surprising that could win. And that's how basically how powerful it's got. And this is the tool that we need to think about in our teaching. This tool that, 2.5 million years ago was like just a handheld tool to right now where this tool is now thinking for itself and it can beat humans. And I believe it's this year, it also just beaten for the first time a physical competition where it was racing drones and the AI could outdo the world champion drone race as well. Okay, so I think the question that I want to ask in education, and this is like a short story of education, AI and education, and it revolves around this one question. And I posed this question in sort of mid-2022, I think it was, roundabout, where I asked our teachers the simple question, is it an A? And what I did is I sent them this picture. At that time, I was fortunate enough to be one of the few people selected to be on the DALL-E program. And I drew this image in DALL-E. And there's my prompt. Not the greatest prompt at that time. We didn't really know much about prompts. And I'm going to talk about prompts a bit later. But this is what I sent them. And I said, is this an A, to all the art teachers around? And, I was just quite surprised. Everybody was sort of shocked. The response was totally, what is going on here? Who drew this? How did you get this image? Eventually, they started realizing that it's computer drawn. That was what I told them. And I said, would you give it an A? And I couldn't get a clean answer out of the teachers, which is quite surprising. And what they seem to worry about is the AI the artist? Was the first question. The second question is it authentic? Is it art? Can we call this art? And then the last question was teachers always go to, can you evaluate this thing? And how do you evaluate this thing? And I think that's the problem we're still in today. So what's happening in the art world at the moment is there's a whole group of artists just making AI art. So you cannot say that AI art is not art. But in schools, do our systems work? And so if I go back to this one I was also bluffing that it was a drawing for a drawing exam, which is a 24-hour exam. And I said, well, I did this in 5 minutes. Can I just, if I was in the exam, could I just leave now? Because I've done my drawing, is it an A, is it art? And yeah, so I want you to think about that, because I think that's an important thing to think about in your teaching as well. And then obviously as DALL-E got better, this on the right here, I drew this portrait of this girl. She was doing a presentation And so I decided just to, up my skills. It took me most probably about 1.5 hours to draw her. It looks exactly like her. She would recognize herself. The only thing that I left off was her gold chain because I couldn't see what was hanging at the end of it. It was just too small for me to observe. So in the end, is it also all about my AI is more intelligent than yours? That's another question I'd like you to think about when we're working through this. So if you've got the better AI, is your results going to be better? And so I think that's quite scary, and something really to think about. And then the moral of the story was, how should this thinking tool be used in education? And I'm not just talking about graphic thinking tools. I'm talking about all of them here. So that was like a story I gave you that is talking about the art tools, but I'm talking about any tool, writing essays, writing stories, particularly all the writing AIs, and maths that's catching up, programming, etc., etc. Okay, I have a second little story for you. This one is where we developed a little bit further in the journey of AI, but the question is, the statement is, the AI's response was weak. So, and what the person is saying is they're saying that it's weak in relation to the content. It's got no depth of content. So what the teachers were doing is they typed in exam questions, which I'm sure you've all done because I know teachers love doing that kind of thing to check their answers. So you go to your matric exam, you take the exam, and you type in the questions. And this is exactly what they did. They typed in the question exactly as it was stated on the exam paper. And this is the kind of things that they came up with. They said, it's so literal, it's obviously fake. And I'm sure we've all thought that. And then, it was so wishy-washy in its answer. And then I thought to myself, what do you think about that? I thought, that the teachers who are putting in an exact question and expecting to get an exact answer don't know anything about input. And AI is all about the input. And that's basically what I'm going to look at today, as I said, very quickly. And so the moral of the story is what skills are needed to be used with the thinking tools. And one of them is the prompt. You can't just type an exam question in. You need to prompt the AI into thinking the way you want it to think. And once you've taught it that, then you can start breaking it down later. Okay, now I'm just going to briefly touch on something which is close to my heart. What is there to be afraid of? And this is a short story of what I define as neo-colonialism, and that AI is sort of a way that countries are colonizing from a distance, which is what neo.
Michael.
Yes.
Michael, if I can just jump in there for a moment, we've got about another 10 minutes or so for the presentation. Cool.
Okay, so I'm going to now really speed up. We're on to our last section.
No stress, all good.
Yes, I won't stick with this. I'll let you think about it. But basically, you have to pay to get AI, and the more you pay, the better it gets. And if you're going to see, I'm going to be using a lot of AI for this demonstration. So how do you use this in education? And what I wanted to show you particularly is just one example, and this is how to use multi-layers of AI. So this is just a graphic novel. You're making a graphic, it can be any subject. It's best practice in teaching. It follows the rules of that. And let's just have a quick look at it. So the first thinking tools that one needs if one's going to be making a graphic novel, and I use it for all subjects, like Afrikaans, maths, art are the three that I've used it for, but history is beautiful for that as well. Okay, these are three tools, LLMs that you could use. Those are the ones that I use. I use all of them to make the story. And what they're all about is basically prompts. And this is a simple prompt. And what I've done is I've highlighted in red the sort of the main key things that the prompt needs, right? What's it going to do? And then you ask it sort of over here, what's it going to do? You give it an answer. You then include, then I say to it, these are the red. So the red are the instructions that are very clear. Include only the below information in the story. And there I put in my notes. So we're talking about 20 pages of notes, 10 pages of notes, however long I wanted to understand. So I'm not asking it to go and search the web. I'm telling it just to use my notes. And then I tell it how long I want. And that's a very simple prompt. So this is sort of how your prompt should look. If you're looking at a more complex prompt, but it's the same principle, so all the red is instructions. So in this more complex prompt, what I do here is I type out every single instruction using specific key things, like you see the hashes and the stars to tell it when it's going to do something. So here I'm telling it what tone, what language, what length, how to discuss it, and then I add my notes, and then I tell it write, either summarize those notes or write the novel from these notes. And I do it for each of the LLMs. So I've got 3 lots. Then I mix them all together and then generate another story. It does take a little bit of time, but it's quicker than writing your own story. AI should be 60% of the work, and humans should be 40%. I know there is a recommendation, 80% AI and 20% humans, but I think that's in the next year. Not quite yet. And then the most beautiful prompt to use is a conversational prompt, because that you can really build up, and you really don't have to, your thinking comes as you discuss. So you treat it as a full discussion. Once again, the red is the sort of instructions, but there's 3 main steps to it that one should follow. You first instruct the AI what to do, then you coax it, and then you correct it. And then you will start getting decent information out of it. So here you can just see what I'm doing. I'm saying, first of all, I just instruct it, make a photorealistic, then I coax it, put some jokes in, make it interesting, make it a dialogue, and then I correct it. Like here, it didn't realize that the artwork I was discussing was black and white. So I just said, hey, remember, it's black and white painting. You can't discuss color. And so that's the next step. So that's the first tool that I'm using. You'll notice that already there's 4 AI tools using. If I'm paying for them, each one at $20, we'd start to build up. From there, I move to this AI tool, which has got lots of tools inside them. And at the moment, they're sort of free, and then they're moving to a token system soon, but at the moment, it's quite free. And here, what I do is I adjust the reading level. So you can adjust it from a grade 2 right up. Now, you can do all this in your LLM models, but it's better to find a specialist tool, I find, to do this kind of stuff. So I adjust the reading level to whatever, grade 10, 8, 9, grade 3 learner. And I normally use a level below the grade that I'm trying to think about, and it rewrites my story to that level. Okay, and then obviously now we want to put some images into our graphic story. You can go and use these 3. These are the 3 top ones at the moment. Obviously, they're not always going to be there. I love Leonardo, the girl that I drew. That was done in Leonardo. Midjourney is too much of a community and you have to pay. And DALL-E's a bit limited because Microsoft owns it. So they just keep locking it here and there. But they're all great. They all work really well. But I don't use those. I go straight into Canva. Open up Canva. I go to the docs. So that's what Canva looks like. I go to the docs button. I click the docs button. And generally, here's the heading, so you normally hit enter. And if you right click, there is a magic write. You could use it. That could be another one. But by now, I'm tired of writing. I just want to now make images for my graphic novels. I only use this later if there's an error in a paragraph, or if I want to add another joke or something, I use the magic write, which is a right click. You then paste your story in. And once you've pasted your story in, you go to apps and you go and find this magic media button. And from there, you can now, I take my text exactly from the graphic novel, because it's very descriptive when you say do a graphic novel in the AI. And you then type in, paste the text into here from your graphic novel. You paste it in here, you choose your style, and there's a few other buttons. It's very simple. All the images drawn for this presentation was done not in the top graphic programs. That's why the one guy's got 6 fingers. They're all done here in Canva, and its images are, as you might have noticed, are good enough, and it's fast. So I can put together the whole sort of graphic novel quite quickly. Once I've finished building the graphic novel in Canva, I do take it out. You can convert it to a presentation. I convert it to a book. Once you've done that, I then go to this, is one of my favorite AIs. It's also free at the moment, which is Brisk. And there's many things you can do here as well. You can also get it to write, etc. But I use my tools for specialist things. And in this one, I use this one to make quizzes for books. And yeah, so what I do here is I paste all the text back into this AI, and basically I then make a graphic novel. This is just a few pages from the graphic novel. All these images, are from Canva. So the first one here would be a cover. This is part of the story. So I wanted some background. So obviously I told the AI to put background of the time. And this one's all about Marcel Duchamp's work. Here's my joke. That's also drawn in A. This is just another page. Interestingly enough, it recognizes people from, like, famous people. So this looks like somebody you might know, which is Einstein, maybe. So, because he's important to what was happening in Dadaism at the time, and I told the AI this, obviously, in my prompt. And so when we talked about Einstein, I mentioned his name. The funny thing about Canva, you can't have first and surname. So you just put initial and second name because it hates it. It bans you. And yeah, this looks like Marcel Duchamp. And I mentioned his name, so I had to call him M. Duchamp. And it looks like him. And I've told it to draw in the 1930s style. And this obviously here would be from Cabaret Voltaire, which is Dadaism, if you know. But as I say, for any subject, it really works well. And I'm writing here at a grade 12 level because this is for grade 12, this graphic novel, this particular one. And then finally, just to show you what the quiz looks like at the end that I got out of Brisk. This is it. Obviously, you get the correct answers as well because you might not know the correct answers. But here's a close-up of, the multiple choice. You can see the levels grade 11, but grade 12 readers find it. I find that my marks have gone up since I've lowered the grade level to 11 when it's a grade 12 student, etc., all the way down. The grade 8 student gets a grade 7 reading level. And that's the last bit I just rushed through very quickly. And there's a little bit of time for questions.
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much, Michael. I think that was really interesting. I'm fairly certain there will be quite a few questions, and I think some of us would have liked to seen even more how you how you work with these various AIs. I think what really stood out for me personally is the fact that there's it's like you have a certain tool for the job. There's not one AI that does it all. You need to,
yes,
from what you explained, is that
I see that as really critical, that you don't just use one and rely on one. You need to move between the AIs and learn the tools and use them for what they're best at. So each one you'll find has a strength. Specialist tools are beautiful, but I didn't speak long on that because we've been held ransom by those companies because you have to pay them a monthly fee. And as I say, the amount of AIs I'm using, there's no ways I could pay that monthly fee. To be costing me over 10,000, I calculated a month. And if you look at my sort of search engine, my Google window, it's spotted with AIs all around the window. I have like about 5 that are watching me every time I do something, and I'm watching them. That makes
interesting.
Sense. Brisk
interesting and scary.
Brisk works with Google Docs. So you always have to, and it's wonderful. There's a lot of things in Brisk that I didn't touch on, just the quiz. I use the quiz a lot, but there's lots of other ones in that one as well, sub apps.
Awesome. We've almost run out of time. Are there any other questions? I mean, if anybody has questions, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself also and just ask the questions verbally. Any comments potentially? Adrian, yes.
Thanks, Albert. Good afternoon, everyone. And Michael, that was fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to be picking your brains a whole lot more. So I just wanted to thank Michael actually publicly for doing this, and just indulge, or rather thank him for his graciousness in indulging me in spending a lot of time explaining how his work aligns with best practices. And what I've seen him do, boy oh boy, if you get the right tools and have the right knowledge and have access to some of the expertise of Michael in blending everything together, we don't need to be afraid of this. It can really transform things for students. So thank you, Michael. It's really great. Thanks, Albert.
Thanks very much.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Keith?
Yeah, just to pick up on what Adrian said there, I think what's so important is that in my experience, and I've been around a while, every time you say to teachers, here's a new technology, they faint because they think, well, I'm sorry, but I don't have time for new technology. Whereas I really think, and this is the thing that I'm trying to emphasize with the teachers, that this is an aid like no other. It doesn't mean you have to start at the top end of the scale. You start off at the bottom end of the scale, and it's going to make your life simpler. Forget about all the educational theories and things like that, which is also an important debate that we have about it. But it's going to make your life easier. And you're going to be a better teacher for using this. And we haven't given many teachers tools like that the last couple of years. Let's face it, certainly not in the department.
No, 100%. I think most of us here will definitely agree with you, Keith, on that. And it might seem a slightly daunting tool, but simple things like, just creating a free account on ChatGPT, just starting to have a conversation with the AI itself, understanding the way it thinks, the way it approaches things. Slowly but surely you start to pick up what prompts work really well and so forth. So yes, definitely a great tool for all of us.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Michael, maybe a last comment.
Yeah, I
maybe
do want to
from you?
emphasize the prompts. I think that's the way forward. I think you need to, if you want to take anything away, I gave you a general knowledge, but I'd like you to just take away the idea of the conversational prompt and really pushing that conversation. I've pushed my conversation so far where the AI has actually said it refused, and it's brought up my name. It's Michael, I refuse to talk to you. And then it shuts off. So that's how far I've pushed it. You've really got to push it to, get what you want from it.
Yeah.
If it won't give it to you, it'll shut itself down.
Awesome. No, thank you very much, Michael. I think we all learned a lot. From our side, I know this is the second educator we had now in a row from St. Stilians. Thank you for sharing you with us, sharing you with the rest of the teaching community. I think it's. I know you're busy and time is also of the essence. But thank you again for joining, sharing your knowledge.
Time has been shared greatly by the AI. They just want to begin the presentation. It's got a name called Timeline Junkie now.
There we go. Thank you very much. Awesome. Yeah, so I think that is the end of this webinar. Again, as always, please keep in mind that Inspire Africa is here to support you. If you have any further queries related to this topic or require assistance potentially with the implementation of any kind of 4IR technology really, or potentially with your curriculum, with finding applicable curriculum, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at any time. And wishing you a wonderful afternoon ahead, and until next time, which will probably be in the new year only, take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.